being your own source of confidence. Because I think so many times, like when you think about confidence, why are you confident? Because somebody tells you you look pretty that day? Because somebody tells you you're smart? Because somebody gives you a raise? Because somebody gives you a promotion? All of a sudden now you're confident? When it's like, you can create that confidence, that feeling within yourself.
Welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast, a podcast about women who work in sports. I'm your host, Jahaan Blake. After 15 years of working for 3 major league teams, including the Boston Red Sox, Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Chicago Cubs, I discovered the one thing I loved the most was helping women in sports shatter glass ceilings and take their seat at the table. I loved it so much that I made a business out of it. I have the honor of coaching high-performing women in the sports and entertainment industry and supporting them as they go after exactly what they want in their career. So if you are feeling tired of waiting on the sidelines, done being overlooked for promotions, and you're ready to pull ahead of the pack and take your career to the next level, girl, I'm here for it. I also created the Game of Her Own podcast to support you as well. We are here to share the stories of incredible women who work in sports and entertainment. These leaders and trailblazers will inspire you with their success and the lessons they've learned along the way to the top. Ladies, there is nothing like women empowering women. I am so honored you're here.
Ladies, here we go. It is the start of 2021. I want to take a moment though, before we get started and say how grateful I am that you are here and a Game of Her Own listener. I'm honored. Let me tell you, I'm also so honored that I get to support you with this podcast and my coaching programs. It is definitely 100% a pinch me moment. Okay, so I'm having a little fun this month. All 4 episodes in January are dedicated to women who work directly with the players. It was so fun recording all of these episodes. No, don't worry. During the interviews, they will still share their journeys of how they got to where they are now, including the ups and the downs. I wanted to interview these women because frankly, there aren't many women in positions like theirs. And just like you, I'm curious about their journeys and how they were successful in landing some incredible jobs and crushing it once they got there. So I'm not going to give it all away right now, but I will tell you, you do not want to miss these episodes. Okay, so who's up first? My next guest, Hannah Huesman, is the mental skills coach for the Philadelphia Phillies. Yes, she is a mental skills coach. And I wanted you to hear from her because not only is her role critical to the success of the players on the field, her expertise also applies to you and your career. Listen, at the end of the day, the fundamentals are the same. Everyone has to work on their mental fitness if we want to be successful. So it's exactly why I invited Hannah to join the Game of Her Own podcast and help us kick off 2021. All right, ladies, are you ready? Let's do the thing.
Hannah, I am so excited about today. I was totally creeping on your Instagram like before, like I started following you and like I liked a photo from like a year ago, I think. I was like, oh shoot. I was like, she's gonna know that I was creeping. But you have some amazing stuff on your Instagram, but we're gonna get into all that in a moment. Before we get started, can you take us back in time and tell us when you fell in love with sports?
Oh my goodness. When did I fall in love with sports? I'm going to say when I was like 2 or 3. Well, it started, my first word actually was ball. So if that's any indication on my family and my upbringing, my first word was ball. Yep. And I have a younger brother who's 21 months younger than me. So we grew up incredibly competitive and we played all the sports. I think the only thing we never really did was soccer. We had all the hand-eye coordination, but foot-eye coordination was never there for us. But we would run track. I did gymnastics for 8 years. I played softball, basketball, like football, like, you know, you name it, like we played it. And so I've loved sports my whole life. And I knew this was like what I was most passionate about and what lit my fire the most. And from a really young age, I knew like I wanted to do something for the rest of my life that I enjoyed. And my parents did that in their jobs and they're doing that. But I guess I was just seeing so many other people doing things that they hated. And like, I get it. There's a lot of factors. We have to make a living. We have to make money. But one of my like non-negotiables was doing something that I love. And the thing I love most in the world is sports. And so I knew from a young age, like I was going to be in sports my whole life, just didn't really know to what capacity. and played college softball and thought I was going to be a strength and conditioning coach for a while, thought I was going to be a softball coach or a basketball coach for a while. And none of it was just like, yes, this is it. And then stumbled into an elective class my senior year of undergrad in college that was sports psychology, like 101, like intro to sports psychology. And I was like, are you kidding? What is this? How can I learn everything about it? Why are we not using this? Like I was playing softball, like why aren't we using this? And from then on, I was like, this is it. And so got my master's in sports psych and motor behavior. And all I do all day long is talk to people about how the mind and the body work together to produce optimal performance. So figured it out.
I love it. So that was your senior year you took that class.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Last semester of my senior year too.
Wow. Usually when people are just kind of like cashing it in and getting ready to, figure out what's next and don't care about their classes. Wow. So your last semester you took this class, and so you're a D1 softball player and basketball, correct?
Yeah. So weird story. I actually went and signed to played basketball my freshman year and then switched sports and finished. And I played softball my sophomore, junior, senior year. So I kind of grew up playing softball and basketball together and made the decision to play basketball. And then I was like, a lot of things happened my freshman year. And luckily, I got to stay at the same university, and I had talked to the softball coach before I'd even gotten there and went into his office and was like, hey, this isn't working out. Like, is there any opportunity? And he was like, come on. So I had to work my tail off because I hadn't touched a softball in over a year. Last time I played was in high school. So it was a bit of an adjustment getting back into the swing of D1 level things. But yeah, I switched sports. So kind of unique, very unique actually.
Wow. Yeah. So you had enough sense to say, this isn't working out. You didn't like force yourself. I guess it goes back to you thinking about, I want to do something I'm passionate about. You want to be happy, and you just decide to make that switch. That's a big deal when you go there for one thing as a freshman, and college is so intimidating. No matter how like strong of a personality you are, it's the same for everybody, right? Like you first get there, you're like sticker shock for a second. You're just like, what's happening? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like 18, 19 years old, have no clue what I'm doing, about to make a huge like life decision. And I'm like, I have no clue what's going to happen. Should I stay there? Should I switch schools? Should I not play sports at all? Like, what do I do? And like, how is this decision going to impact the rest of my life? And it's funny because you're like, even like I'm so strong-willed now, but I believe that moment switching from basketball to softball is what truly gave me all of my grit, all of my sass, all of my like, I don't put up with anything, because I dealt with a lot of things during that. And it was like, I don't know if I'd be able to like crush in a man's world without that incident. Nothing's going to happen to me. Like nobody's going to walk over, because it was a crazy scenario. We don't have to get into the details, but you can ad lib on like how crazy it was. And I, without a doubt, think like that was one of the most hardest decisions I've ever had to make, and one of the most hardest and difficult moments that I've ever been put in. But like, without a doubt, like gave me the strength of who I am today and how I can do my job today. So I'm a big believer in everything happens for a reason, even if it takes 10 years to figure out what that reason is.
Yes. All right. Yeah. So tell everybody what you do and who you do it for, which I'm so excited about this.
Yes. So my title is a mental skills coach, and I work for the Philadelphia Phillies Major League Baseball organization. A lot of people don't know, but Phillies aren't just the Phillies. We actually have 8 minor league teams as well as the big league team, all the way from Philadelphia to the Dominican Republic to Venezuela. So we have over 300 players in our organization, constantly all over the place and moving and jumping, and all with the same goal of how do we get and play in the big leagues. And so we have 4 mental skills coaches on staff right now, and we are exactly kind of what the name says. People are always like, what's a mental skills coach? And for me, it's not a sports psychologist. It's not a sports psychiatrist. It's not a therapist or a counselor. It is literally a coach, but instead of coaching some physical aspect of the game, right? Hitting, pitching, base running, outfield, infield, catching, whatever, we are coaching the mental side of the game. And so what is the mental side of the game? It's anything and everything that has to do with your performance. So confidence, composure, concentration, focus, even enjoyment, motivation, resiliency, right? All of those things fall under our category. And so we're constantly trying to bridge the gap between physical training and mental training and make them one. And how can we make sure like you're working so hard on all of the physical aspects of your game that you're not neglecting the mental aspects of your game? Because for me, worst case scenario is physically you're good enough and you make it to the big leagues, and then mentally, like you're stopped. You choke, you freak out, you panic. you're not prepared, whatever it is, something mentally held you back. And I'm like, how awful would that be? Like you worked so hard, but you forgot this one piece. And so that's what we do. We coach that one piece, just like you get coached on everything else. You know, we're not just there to fix things. We're there to help and guide and support these performers to reach their full potential, but through the mental lens.
Ooh. All right. One, you're making my job super easy because I was like, okay, tell us about it. But you already got in there and told us exactly what you do in that role. Okay. There's 4 mental skills coaches. Did you say? Is that
Yes.
right? Okay, so there's 4 of you. I mean, how did you figure out this existed? How did you go out? Take us through, because this doesn't seem like, I mean, this is a big job, right? Like I say that about everyone's job, but you are somebody who is dealing with the product, and I hate to refer to it like that, but the product on the field, right? Like this is a big job, and their performance, and when it's good, leads to high revenue. And we all know how that all works. So here you are, one of 4 mental skills coaches for the Philadelphia, I almost said
Phillies.
Woo!
I know. It's okay. It's close.
It's been a long week in my defense. Everyone is listening. We recorded.
We like the Eagles too.
Yes. I recorded this during election week, so it's been a long week. Okay. So you work with the Phillies organization. There's 4 of you. Talk us through how you even learned about this job and how you got there.
So it's funny because when I graduated, which was about 5 years ago from my master's program, there wasn't a ton of opportunities out there. Timing is everything, right? And I graduated in a year and a half with my master's instead of 2 years. And so I graduated in December instead of in May, like everybody else. And it just so happened that the Pittsburgh Pirates, Major League Baseball organization, were hiring an intern for their season starting in February. And everybody else was still in school. And I was like, hey, I'm fresh out. Like, I'm going to apply to this. And so that was my first opening into the baseball world. And I found out about that through our master's program. Like every now and then they'll hear announcements and the teachers just kind of send them like, hey, there's this job opportunity or this internship opportunity. And that's how I found out about it. And I had heard of a couple other people applying for it and even some PhD students applying for it. And I almost didn't apply for it because I was like, I'm fresh out. I'm scared to death. I don't really know if I know the textbook. Like I got good grades, 4.0, but like, I don't know. But I was like, you know what am I going to do right now? Like I didn't have a job. This was like probably November and I graduated in December and I was like, I don't have a plan. So like, let's do it. Why not? Ended up applying.
That's crazy though. Let's talk about that for a second. With the mental skills coach, I mean, that's your job now, but then you were going to apply for an internship and it sounds like I'm hearing a little bit of self-doubt.
Oh my gosh.
Creeped on in, like
all of it.
How did you really, I mean, you're telling us a story now. It sounds like it was very easy to just like zap it, but talk us through a little bit about like how you like convinced yourself and got over that self-doubt.
So it's funny because I come back to this a lot because people always ask me, what's the one thing you've learned in sports psychology that you wish you would have had when you were playing? And it kind of applies to the same thing, right? And it's without a doubt, confidence, but being your own source of confidence. Because I think so many times, like when you think about confidence, why are you confident? Because somebody tells you you look pretty that day? Because somebody tells you you're smart? Because somebody gives you a raise? Because somebody gives you a promotion? All of a sudden, now you're confident? When it's like, you can create that confidence, that feeling within yourself. And I hadn't really experienced that yet because my whole college career, I was looking for outside external people like parents, significant others, coaches to tell me that I was doing a good job. And it wasn't until probably applying for this internship was the first time I was like, why not? Right. One of the things I love the most is you already have the no, like in everything you do, you already have the no. So like, if I don't apply, the answer is no. If I do apply and the answer is no, we're still back to square one. And so it was honestly just like saying F it and jumping and doing it. And honestly, like a little bit of my competitiveness was one of our PhD students who was actually a minor league baseball player was applying for the same job. And I was like he's definitely a shoo-in, but like, let's do it. Like, cause if I win, how sick would that be? If I could get this, how cool would that be? And it ended up just working out. And he actually got the internship the following year when he actually ended up graduating. So it worked out perfectly, but it was honestly just not fearing failing and being okay with taking that leap and knowing like the risk is way, way worth the reward if it works out. And I had 4 interviews. One of them was at a fried chicken place in Nashville, Tennessee with 9 men. What do you wear to that interview?
Oh, I'm sorry. What? Like,
yeah. So baseball winter meetings were in Nashville that year. And I lived in Chattanooga at the time, still do. And they were like, can you drive to Nashville for an in-person interview? And I'm like, of course. And they're like, well, we're meeting at Hattie B's, which is like this famous hot fried chicken place in Nashville, which is like 10 minutes from my parents' house in Nashville. And I was like, sure. But like, what do you wear to that? with like strength coaches, assistant GMs, mental skills coaches. Like, they've been in a conference all day. They want greasy food and beer. And this is your interview. You're on.
Was that interview number 1 or interview?
That was 2.
Ooh.
I had 1 on the phone, and then the second was in person. And then I think I had 2 more on the phone.
Wait. What did you wear?
I think I ended up wearing like black jeans and like a semi-nice casual top, like blouse, like nothing like office attire. And then like flats, some kind of like almost like Vans flats or something, because I was like, I'm not wearing a pencil skirt. I'm not wearing a dress. Like, and I didn't overdo the makeup. And it was just like shooting the shit the whole time. Uh-huh. It wasn't necessarily an interview to know my knowledge. That was the interview to see if I would be a good fit, a good vibe. Like if I could hang with the coaches and the staff and fit in. And that's all it was. And I was like shooting the shit. And I was actually on a pretty strict eating regimen back then. And so we were at this fried chicken place and I got grilled chicken, which like just opened the doorway for them to obliterate me all night, which was just perfect. Cause I was like, I can handle this. I can take this heat. And they just wanted to see how well you could fit in and vibe. And if it was weird or awkward. And so it was like, instead of making it, it was like, okay, like, let's go for it.
That's fantastic. So it sounds like to me, like, it means an interview. So you're going to be nervous. You're going to prep. You're going to think about your appearance. In your case, you're also going to think about what you're eating. And so, but it sounds to me, you were 100% your authentic self.
And that's what got me the job.
Because I was like, oh, she totally ate the fried chicken, because that's what I probably would have done. And you like were like, no, I got to stay true to what I'm doing, and I'm just going to take it.
Yeah. And I think this was the first time too, I had heard these 2 words. And in the last, so I've had 3 jobs since then. I had the Pirates job, then I worked in New York City, and then the Phillies. And the 2 common denominators, I think, of all 3 of those jobs, getting those jobs, is my confidence in my ability, which goes back to the very first thing I said, and then my enthusiasm. Like everybody's always like, my God, like you love your job. And I said, I'm not doing anything that I don't love. It's mind blowing to me how simple it is to be enthusiastic about your job and how few people actually are. Like, it's actually mind blowing, because I don't even want to be around you, because like you're so miserable. You hate what you do like, I genuinely hate that for you. Like, and I want to like pull you out of that and find something that makes you happy. And so it's like, to me, that's not a compliment. That's an expectation for myself. But to other people, it's like, wow, your confidence in your ability and your enthusiasm gets you the job. I'm like, that's it. But it's really unique. And so I went in with confidence. I went in with enthusiasm. I shot the shit. I was myself. And I think that's when you try to be somebody else, they sniff that out in a freaking heartbeat. And they don't like that, especially in my position, which is a position of honesty and vulnerability and genuineness. Yep. And if you're not authentically you, like, they're like, how is somebody going to be authentically them to you if you're not authentically you to them?
Yes. And you're in your early 20s when this is happening. I mean, you're not even 30 yet. So you're in your early 20s when this is happening, and you just knew, I'm just going to go in and be myself.
I've always had more guy friends, you know, it's always been like, I've always felt more comfortable in that environment anyway. So it was nothing too much. It was honestly making sure I didn't try too hard, which is funny because I tell players that all the time. It's when we start trying too hard and start forcing things and getting outside of who we actually are, when we start making the most mistakes. And even though like the world tells you like, try harder, do more, work more, work harder. And it's like, maybe the thing you need the most is to take a step back and to be yourself and to trust that everything you've done has prepared you to this moment. And maybe that's the best thing. That's the best thing you can do in order to give yourself that success in that moment, instead of panicking and overcompensating and talking too much or not talking at all. It's like, oh my God. Like, we overthink everything because we want to be successful.
Yes, it's true. It's hard to slow down because of fear of missing out. Like, right? Like I have to grind. We're thinking of just like women in sports and working, and like, I just have to do everything because if I slow down, I'm going to miss out. When I have been so, like, even this week, just slowing down this week, I've come up with these great ideas where I'm like, I mean, I just took a couple of days off, and I felt a little bad about it, but I was like, you know what? I need to. Mentally, I need to. And
amazing.
So much more just came to me. It was one of those things where I took those days off, but I ended up working because I was like, oh my God, I have this great idea and I have to do it now. You know what I mean?
That's the best one. That's the best time. It's so funny because like these skills we're talking about in an interview, but it's the same for high level performers. And that's what I love about mental performance, is taking a break is necessary for all time performance. I say this all the time, like, if you are living, if you are in a relationship, if you have a job, if you are a parent, you are performing in some way, shape, or form every single second of every single day. And so it's like, how are you taking care of yourself mentally and your mental performance instead of just grinding it out? And it's not just for elite level athletes, it's for every single person listening to this. And that's my favorite. And the quarantine has provided really interesting opportunities because everybody's kind of been struggling with their mental performance and mental health, but it's really like broadened like my horizon on working with businesses. And I have a couple companies on the side that are like all into this and have nothing to do with sports. They're sports fans, but nothing to do with sports. And it's like, oh my God, we are dealing with this right now, having confidence, trying too hard. Work isn't fun anymore. How do we enjoy this again? Like, because we know we perform better if we enjoy. And I love the transfer of skills from sports to performance, which we're all performing. So it's pretty cool.
I mean, the fundamentals are the same. I mean,
absolutely. In anything.
This is why I wanted to talk to you. So I was like, okay, the fundamentals are the same. She's doing a really good job, cool job in sports, but like at the same time, people are going to get so much from this. They're not athletes, or maybe they're athletes still, but they're not, you know what I mean? They're not on the baseball field. They're not major league players who are listening to this. Yeah. Hey, Jahaan here. I hope you're enjoying the interview. I'm sure you are thinking about your own career right now and how you can pull out in front of the pack to take your career to the next level. For 18 years, supporting women in sports has been my favorite part of my career. And I would love to support you, whether it's joining my free Game of Her Own community or one of my one-on-one coaching programs. I am here for you. Send me a message at jblake@jahaanblake.com or DM me on Instagram @jahaanblake. And let's schedule a time to have a free session. I cannot wait to hear from you. All right, let's get back to why you're here. Okay, so talk more about this journey, because to me, from outside looking in, right, you have this amazing job. You had this aha moment in college, you know, in your final semester. And so from the outside looking in, it looks like everything is perfect. But take us through maybe a time that like you got knocked down and how to like really pick yourself back up. Yeah, so I love this question because you're right. Everybody does see this. And the number of messages on a weekly basis of how do I get your job? What did you do to get there it's a joke. I don't even know how to explain this. I was actually thinking about making a video and just keep sending it out to people. It's like going to be an hour long. But so I get this job, I get this internship, and I go down to Bradenton, Florida, where is the Pittsburgh Pirates spring training facility is. And I work there for a season, and then boom, they're not hiring full time. And I'm like, okay, what do I do? Like they kind of had thrown on the table another internship. And I'm like, okay, at this point, I'm like, I don't know, 24, 25, like you need to start making money, really not in a place to like do another internship where it was like minimal pay. And so I decided to walk away, and I was like, here goes nothing. What are we going to get? The only thing I told myself was, if possible, I'm going to try to stay with a job in the field, right? Because I was petrified of if I got out of the field, how hard it would be to get back into the field. And my foot was in the door. And so I was applying for military jobs. I was applying for like high school jobs, even like half voluntary jobs, and like being a softball coach here where I could maybe teach a mental skills course here and there, and ended up landing a private practice job in New York City, which I had never even been in New York City. And I was 25 years old and went up for the day, had an interview, got the job, flew back, and they were like, come back as quickly as you can. Mind you, I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, like big difference between Nashville and freaking New York City. And I'm talking Manhattan. Like I was working in Union Square on 14th Street and lived in Harlem on 125th, right? Like I was like 3 blocks from Apollo Theater. Nice. And amazing. It was seriously amazing. But anyway, packed up all my stuff, moved there, and this was a brand new company. So the guy running it, his name's Dr. Jonathan Fader. He was already a clinical psychologist and had psychiatrists on staff and counselors and therapists, and wanted to branch out and bring a mental performance team on. And so that's where I and another guy had that role of coming in and trying to create this. So once again, it's almost creating this position, right? Which has happened twice now to me. And so we come in, I'm there in like less than a month. I'm in New York by myself with a random roommate, and bawled my eyes out before I went. Like I cry every time because I'm petrified. I have no clue what I'm getting into. I have no clue if this is going to work, if it's going to be great. I think that's what people don't see is how much I've moved around and how much I've sacrificed to get to where I am now. Like I did an internship in college that was in Hilton Head, South Carolina. I was dating Jacob, who's now my husband. We were together for like a year before I left. Then I went to grad school in Knoxville, left. Then I went to Hilton Head, South Carolina, left. Back to Knoxville. Then I went to Bradenton, Florida,
left. Then I went to New York City for a year and a half, left. Then I moved to Clearwater, Florida, like dating. Then we got married and I'm still living in Clearwater, Florida with the Phillies. I begged the Phillies to let me move and live with my husband. And we haven't even been in the same place for like a year and a half now. And we've been together 7 years. And so it's like, nobody sees that. And that's what I tell everybody all the time. I'm like, you have to be willing to go. You can't stay in your hometown if you want the dream job. Like, you can't. Like, if I stay in Chattanooga, like, the dream job here is different than the dream job of the dream job. And like, nobody saw that. I lived in New York. I'm like, all my friends are my former teammates who live in Oklahoma and California and everywhere else. So like, it's very lonely. People don't know that. It's so lonely. And this is me, like, super vulnerable. Like, I FaceTime all the time. When I call my girls, it's an hour call because we talk every 2 or 3 weeks, right? It's like not constant because we are all working and grinding. And it's like, people don't see that. People don't see how lonely it is. People don't see how scary it is. People don't see how you don't move for the money at first. Like, you move for the opportunities and the experience. And then all of a sudden you get there and like, people are like, how'd you do it? And I'm like, I don't even feel like I made it yet. You know, like, I still feel like there's so much to do. And it's like, people don't see all that. And that's like, how do you explain that to somebody? But it was scary. I cried my freaking eyes out multiple nights. I love New York. I hated New York. It was scary as shit sometimes, you know, like, so many emotions. And then, long story short, yeah, it's crazy. And then I ended up wanting to get kind of back into team realm and started looking for baseball gigs and had 2 interviews. I actually got both of them and chose the Phillies. It was just a better fit. And now I've been here for 3 years and it's been amazing. And
wow. Okay. So I have so many questions because you just shared so much in this. I know everyone who's listening is like, wow. Like, that was, I mean, there it is. When you want to tell people, like, when they're like, how did you do it? Just send them this podcast and tell them to listen.
I will. I love it.
Like, listen right to this. Because that was, I mean, it was a perfect, honest, raw, like, how you do it. And like, yes, there are some people who live close to a major city and end up with their hometown team for okay,
perfect.
But that's not,
good for you.
That doesn't right. That does not happen. I'm with you. I went from small town to Boston to LA to Chicago, and I finally just got sick of moving. But but I moved everywhere. But talk to me. The one thing that stood out, and maybe because I've been there, is the crying when like you got to New York. And talk about then what you thought of that. Like, did you feel like you were weak because you were so sad, or just talk us through that a little bit? Because I'm sure other people have gone through this as well.
Yeah. So I do this really weird thing. And I don't cry a lot. Like, I know a lot of people who, when they get mad, they cry. When they watch a sad movie, they cry. And I really don't cry a ton. But it's like, without fail, when I have this big opportunity, or I make a big jump, or I leave family and friends, I freaking bawl my eyes out. And so it's such a rarity for me that it's almost like I want to document it. And so I will like film it and like, just of my emotions. And I usually like send it to my mom, you know, cause she's never there when I'm leaving. And I'm just like, I'm just a freaking wreck. I'm a shit show this morning. Like, I'm about to board my flight in the Uber guy's like, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm fine. Like, it's fine. Like, but it's funny because I do that because then I go back and I see it like a year later and I'm like, oh my God, like this girl, like she had no clue what she was going into. I'm crying because I'm absolutely petrified. I'm crying because I'm uncomfortable. I'm crying because I'm taking such a risk and I have no clue if this is what I'm supposed to be doing or not doing. Every single decision I make, I'm literally like, I think this is the best decision for me right now, so I'm going to go for it. But my God, it hurts like hell. It hurts to leave what's comfortable. It hurts to say goodbye again. It hurts to move again. It hurts to jump again. And it's like all of these emotions and like, of course, I'm like I can do this. I know I can go and be successful, but it doesn't take away from just sheer shock of being absolutely scared shitless, in all honesty. And it's funny because it's like, I just want to be great and I want to be impactful. And you can't tell in that very moment if you're going to be, if this is the right decision. Like, again, like you don't know yet. And I think my saving grace was always like, I was always confident enough to be like, you know what, if this isn't it, we're coming home. Like, we'll make an adjustment. Like, we will be fine. But it was still like pure panic. And I don't know why. I think it honestly just comes down to like being uncomfortable and scary and doing something new. And each time, every single notch in my belt has been freaking worth it. Even if it's a horrible experience, learning what to do, learning what not to do is literally what got me here. The reason I think I'm so good, at what I do is because I've seen so many mentors, good and bad, and known, okay, I want to take pieces of the good and pieces of the bad and make sure I'm intertwining it for what I think is the best way for me to do this job. And what matches up with me authentically. But yeah, it's, oh my God, waterworks, even every year, like when I come home for the off season and then I leave for spring training, which is 6 weeks away, minimum 6 weeks gone. And you have 2 days off in like 50 something days. It's brutal. It's the hardest time of the year. I bawl my eyes out every time because I like got so comfortable being at home and living this life. But then the day I step on the field, like, so we're, you know, in the hotel a day or two. And then the day I'm back in my office doing my thing, I'm like, oh, revived, pumped up, almost this euphoric state of like, this is what I do to make me feel purposeful. Like, this is why I'm on this earth. This is why I'm here. This is why I'm choosing these difficult decisions, because nothing makes me feel more fulfilled, right? You have the love of your significant other, right? That fulfills your cup, this cup. And then you have your job that fulfills this cup. And it's like, there it is. Can you have both? And it's so hard to have both because one's in one place and one's in another place. And some of the best advice I ever got was when you're home, be home. And when you're at work, be at work.
Yep.
Because so often you're like, when I'm home, I feel like I should be working, or when I'm at work, all I want to do is go home. And it's like, at what point are we like embracing where we're at? But it's not easy. I'll tell you that.
It's not, right? And so what I'm feeling like, I feel like we should be friends after this because you just like normalized crying, right? So everyone is listening. I do the same thing whenever I would, you know, I remember when I moved to LA and I was at lunch with a friend and I'm holding back the tears and she's like, what's wrong? And I just been there for like a week. I was like, I knew it was I went after that, you know, I wanted to be in LA. I wanted that move so much, but like, it's okay to want those things, be happy with what you're doing, but just also just like be sad that there's so much uncertainty. Right?
Yes.
I mean, yes, you get homesick. Yes, you miss your friends, like those things too. Yeah. That's okay. But like also the uncertainty of it all. Like you just literally have no idea. And I love your outlook because I've always had a similar one. It's like, doesn't work out. It's okay. I'll figure it out. I always said, I'm like, if it doesn't work out, I'll be a bartender on a beach somewhere and I will be the happiest person ever.
Amazing.
Drunk a lot of the times, but that's fine. I'll be super happy because that just sounds fantastic. I haven't done that yet, but that's always been my like, I'll figure something out.
I love it. But it's hard because nobody sees this. Nobody sees that side of it. Everybody sees, woohoo, moved to New York. Woohoo, landed a job with the Phillies. And it's like amazing. But nobody sees that like yesterday I was bawling my freaking eyes out. You know, it's like.
And it's okay if it's just not the big parts, right? It's okay if you're still crying. Like when I started my business, I came up with this idea and I sold this company on it. And I was like, holy shit. Like it was a huge contract. It was the day we were like launching everything. And I remember I was standing in the kitchen and just started crying. And my husband's like hugging me. He's like, what is wrong? And I was like, I don't know. It's just like, I'm about to do this. Like I came up with this thing and I sold them and this and like, it's happening. But then, I mean, it doesn't make you, and then the reason I asked you like what you thought, and I kind of knew what your answer was going to be, but like, it doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you any less than, it's just, you're actually it makes you stronger because you're so self-aware. Would you agree?
Oh yeah. And talk dirty to me is talking about self-awareness, right? Like everything stems from self-awareness, and like to feel those things is stronger than it is weak. It's, you want to be so successful and you're feeling every single feeling that's inside of you. And that's an incredible feature for the stone cold people who don't feel anything, you know, like there's a difference between level-headed and like an emotional wreck, you know, like we're very level-headed, but like, and we also just don't start crying in the middle of random things, right? It's like in appropriate ways. And like, just like, wow, I am just really feeling this because I'm so passionate about this too. Like I wouldn't be crying. I wouldn't be doing this job if I wasn't passionate about it. And so I know I'm making the right decisions, but that doesn't make it any less easier on my freaking heart and my soul because I'm a feeling emotional human being, which I'm not. I mean, it's funny. I never really claimed to be emotional. I just claimed to be passionate. And so like, I go big, like I go big or I don't go at all. Right. And so like, if I'm going to cry, like it's going to be a mess, but it's because like, I'm so passionate about it. Right. And I, and I love that. And I think that's the most important piece is that I am so passionate about this and about the decisions I make, and I don't make decisions lightly. And I'm never doubting it, but I'm always just weary and like, let's hope for the best. Like, let's go work our tail off and see what happens, and then see where we go from there. So it's worked out so far, I guess.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about, I mean, it's a tough time right now for people. And I remember when, COVID first hit, my podcast producer was like, don't talk about that because it's not going to be around. And, a little bit, people aren't going to want to hear about it. Well, it's still here.
Here we are.
It's November. So
here we are.
I think I know that there's a lot of women out there who are afraid of losing their job, afraid of being laid off. Maybe they've already been laid off. And I think all of that just can really mess with your mindset. So what advice would you give them? I mean, I've been dying to ask you this question given your role. I was like, oh, this is going to be good. So no pressure, but what advice would you give them on the mental toughness side of things?
As cliche as it sounds, the thing I always come back to is 4 words, and it's what can I control? Like, what can I do? If I get fired, if I get let go, if this happens, what can I control about this? If I work harder, does that help me? Does that sell my role, or does that hurt my role more? If I get fired, what can I do about it? Can I start filling out things? What can I do about it? Can I start getting a side job? What can I do about it? Can I pick up a podcast that I've never wanted to start, but now I want to start it, right? Like, what can you actually tangibly do and start giving your time, your energy, and your effort to that? Because when things start happening, we have a tendency, and by we, I mean human beings, have a tendency to just go into this downward spiral of woe is me, the world is ending, this election is going to ruin us, this job is going to ruin us, this pandemic is going to ruin us, like we don't have a shot in hell. And we give all of our energy and all of our thoughts and all of our power to the things that we can do absolutely nothing about. In the grand scheme of things, you can't do anything about a pandemic. In the grand scheme of things, you can't do anything about election. If you voted, you did everything you could do to control it. What can I control? What can I do right now? What is important now, right? The WIN acronym, what's important now? Like, what is important right now that I can do, that I can put my time, my energy, my thoughts, and my efforts towards, that's going to help me now, that's going to help me in the long run. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I think too, we get too focused on all of the things that are too far away from us instead of figuring out like today, like, okay, if my goal is to get another job, right? Because this one failed, whatever happened. My goal is to get another job. What can I do right now? What can I do today that will get me closer to getting that job? Is it listening to a motivating podcast? Is it filling out an application? Is it setting up a LinkedIn account? Is it being more active on Twitter? What can you do right now that will get you a step closer to that? And I think that's sometimes lost. We get so bogged down in things that are too far away or things that are so far out of our control that we forget that the most important thing is what you're doing right now. Like, even if you're listening to this podcast right now, are you actually listening to it? Or is it on in the background and you're doing 87 other things right now and you don't even hear what we're saying? Or are you locked in, maybe taking notes, maybe trying to walk away with one thing that you haven't heard of before? Like, are you just going through motions, or do you have a purpose in what you're doing? Do you have a purpose in every decision that you're making? Are you just doing things because people told me to do this, people told me to do that? Make sure you have a purpose with whatever it is that you're doing too. So do things with a purpose, figure out what is important right now, what can I do right now, and make sure it's something that you actually have control over. Because we spend too much time wasting on things that we literally can do nothing about. And don't get me wrong, have your moment, have your thought over it, that's fine. Yes. But then, okay, if the pandemic is out of your control, what can you do about the pandemic? What can you do about it? And maybe you have something that you can do about it, and go do it. Amazing. But if you can't, then we need to find something else that you can put your time and energy towards, because it is not taking you forward to waste that time and energy. It's bringing you back. So got to figure out what moves you forward.
You know, it's interesting. So you're talking about, focusing on what you can control and not wasting that energy. So it kind of is a segue into my next thought, and my next question is, I'm thinking about you and this, when you were interviewing for the internship, and 8 men and in a fried chicken place ordering grilled chicken, right? Like, when people, when women talk about working in sports, and everyone talks about it's male dominated industry. Okay. Mm-hmm. But you're in baseball ops, right? Like, you're in, you're working with men, right? So talk to us about mindset around that. Like, what advice would you give women who may be intimidated by it, or who may just not know how to approach it? Like, they're in it and they're just like, like, I hear this narrative and what do I do?
So I love this question, because I feel like if you ask, 10 different women, you're going to get 10 different answers. And so this is absolutely what I think. And this is what I did. And it was successful for me. So again, I think you have to know how your personality fits in with them. So I have a very strong-willed, very loud, very outgoing, always been bossy, personality. And so I went into it as, okay, this is a male-dominated environment. This is their environment, and I am an outsider coming in. So it's my job to fit in as much as I possibly can in their environment, right? Because I'm already standing out. I'm almost 6 foot tall, blonde, long hair. They don't not see me, right? Like walking around. And so it's like, how do I blend in as much as possible? And so as crazy as it is, it starts with like what I wear on a daily basis. Like I don't wear tight leggings. I don't wear tight shirts. I don't wear a face full of makeup, but I also don't look like I just rolled out of bed, and that's my personal preference, right? I want to look like I'm awake and ready to go, but I also am not dressing for a freaking beauty pageant when I show up here, right? I wear joggers. I wear a normal t-shirt, like Philly's regular t-shirt that the guys are wearing. I wear the same stuff, and hair's down or up or whatever, and like barely any makeup, and then you go. And that's my personal style. But it was all about, especially in my role, right, where I'm asking guys to be authentically them and be real and be open and be honest and vulnerable with me.
Mm-hmm.
So how dare I come in and judge them for who they are, right? So like cursing doesn't offend me, because if you want to curse in front of me, like, come on, like, I'm not going to get offended by it. If you want to dip in front of me, like, and that's, I'll give you a little shit about it. But like, if that's your decision, like, I'm going to like support you in whatever you do, because that's my role here, is to help support you and guide you, and you feel safe and supported coming and talking to me. So it was a whole lot of building those relationships, building that rapport and that trust, because I believe, again, in my role, that it doesn't matter how much I know about sports psychology. If I can't get them to walk in the door, we're not having conversations. Oh. And the way I get them to walk in the door is building that relationship and that trust and that bond of even if we're talking about their dogs and talking about golden retrievers or talking about whatever, that's how the conversation starts. And it ends with them walking out with a plan, a routine, something that they are working on and trying to execute to become better. Oh. And I think a lot of times people go straight to the punch, like, okay, what do you need on your mental game? And it's like, I care about who you are as a person before I care about who you are as a baseball player. And I think sometimes in this world, you've been around it, like they're only seen as a baseball player. That's potentially really freaking dangerous. If a kid's worth is only in his baseball performance, what happens if he's not performing well?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, is this kid's worth going to go through the floor? How are we building them up as human beings? And I think it's crucial for us too, because we're teaching them mental skills towards their performance, but also mental skills towards their life, and how to make them better partners, better fathers, better businessmen when they get out of baseball, right? Because baseball isn't going to last forever in their lives. And so for me, it's all about fitting into their environment, making them feel comfortable, making sure I'm not walking in the clubhouse, right, when I don't need to be walking in the clubhouse, when people are changing, making sure I'm using back doors, but also making sure I'm always around. And one of the coolest things that I've heard it be put in grad school was like, you never want to be in the middle of the huddle as a mental skills coach, but you always want to be around. Uh-huh. You always want to be in the background. You want to be by the dugout. You want to be behind the bullpens. Like, you just want to be around. So if they need you, you're always there. You're always watching. And like, the kind of running joke is, are you always analyzing us? And I'm like, maybe, like, I don't know, but like just messing with them. And I think that's vital. So that's been my approach. And like, I'll call them out. I'll cuss with the best of them. It's kind of a joke. I actually have a pretty bad cursing mouth, but I think that's part of how I connect with them and how I like hold a strong opinion and a strong voice that's heard and isn't walked over. And I've talked to a few women and girls wanting to get into the field, and I'm like, you can't be too nice. You can't be too nice. And like, some people disagree with that, and that's fine. And that this is my personal opinion. Like, I've seen success by not being too nice. And so I think it works, but like, you got to be able to be like, what the hell did you just say? What are you talking about? Like, come on, like, get up off your ass and go do this in a respectful, mutually beneficial way where you're educating them, you're challenging them, but you're supporting them in the same way. And I think that's where the art comes in, is caring about who they are as a person, but also challenging them who they are as a player.
Talk more about fitting in. So I get that, right? Because your role is different. You're not in a front office, a room full of men and like doing sales, right? Like it's a little different. It's not a little different. It's big. It's really different. But talk about how you fit in and also are like your authentic self? Like you said, like, I don't wear a face full of makeup, but do you normally, or is that just kind of how you are anyway? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, are you just your authentic self anyway? Like, talk more about that.
I like to think I am. I mean, ideally, like, I roll out of bed, throw on sweatpants and go do whatever I need to do. But I also know there's power in feeling good about myself. And I know when I like, do a couple swipes of mascara, put on a little bronzer and brush my hair, like I'm automatically a little bit more confident in standing a little taller. I think that's pretty authentically me. And I love, like, I get to wear, like I said, joggers and a t-shirt every freaking day. Like, that's absolutely authentically me. And I don't have to wear a polo and khakis and heels or anything like that, because that would not be authentically me. I'd probably say I tone it back a notch when I'm in mental skills coach mode, because authentically me is like the loud one, screaming, yelling, like, let's freaking go, and I don't do that as a mental skills coach, because there's a big difference in being a cheerleader and being a mental skills coach, right? I'm not just a raw motivator. It's way deeper than that. And so sometimes I'm like, yeah, like I want to scream, but I do feel like I have to hold back on that a little bit, because I'd rather have the side conversations that lead to deeper conversations than just like a way to go, and almost forcing that like too positive, I guess. Like, I'm just like, hey, how'd it go? I ask how to go 87 times a day, right? I'm like, how'd it go? How do you think it went? Right. And then it starts this conversation. They're like, well, I was all over the place mentally. And it's like, okay, let's go talk. Like, let's talk later. Let's catch me early tomorrow. Right. And I think that's the most important piece about being around, is it leads to deeper conversations. But I'd like to think I'm pretty closely authentically me. I'm very sarcastic. I cuss a lot because I think that's what builds the relationships. But yeah, that's a really good question. And maybe that's why I'm so passionate about it, because it is me. It's not me really trying to put on this facade of someone I'm not. If anything, I got to tone it down a notch. But then when we present, I tone it all the way up, right? I'm yelling, yes. We're singing, we're doing crazy things. I'm like in your face, and it's energizing and it's fun, because I think that's how you learn more, and what sticks more is when you enjoy whatever you're doing. And so like when we do have like presentations and development sessions, it's very energetic, because sometimes it gets mundane and all that, but just being out there, it's pretty chill. And again, just like being there and being freaking ready and paying attention and watching what's happening. So when a conversation does present itself, you're more than prepared. Instead of being like, oh, you threw a bullpen? Like, what are you doing out there, right? Like, no, we're watching everything you guys are doing, so that when you do come, we are very well equipped to have that conversation.
Yes. All right. I love that. So you're super self-aware, and like you understand you bring your full self to work. You have to tailor it in certain situations. Just like if someone was sitting in a boardroom, they might not want to be, you know what I mean? Like going at it like at a level 10 and yelling, and trying to get the room going. But like, you just got to know know when to turn it up and turn it down, is what I'm hearing. And also, and I love the not being nice, right? Like you know what works for you. And what I'm hearing is you just use your voice. Yeah. And you are not afraid to use it.
Yeah. And I think like what you're saying is like, you have to be authentically you. You have to be self-aware. Like, and I know that that's who I am. And I know that that's what gets me what I want as quickly as I want when I need it. Right. And you're like, you talk about self-awareness, like being a female in a male dominated world. Like if you don't have self-awareness, it ain't going to be good. Even something as small as presenting to 30 guys in a room. Okay. And I walk up, I walk back, but instead of turning around and putting my back to the crowd, I backpedal. I don't need to give these guys an opportunity to even put in their head to do you know what I'm saying? And so it's like, I have to constantly be aware of the things that I do, the way I stand, where I stand, how I say things, even just like grabbing somebody on the shoulder, right? Being careful how and when you do that. It's all about self-awareness, even like going into certain doors. And if you do have to go into this door, like, are you like this? Or are you like, hey, like, are you looking away? Or are you like, it sucks, but you do have to be on a freaking level 10 constantly, because there's just things that can be misconstrued. And even if it's not even trying to be, like, even if you don't even know what's happening, it can be misconstrued in a wrong way. And you have to be freaking aware of that constantly. And it's funny because I'll have conversations with the staff and coaches and like tell them these things. And they're like, oh my God, I didn't even think about that. And I'm like, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy the things we have to think about and do and alter how we do things and when we do things to make sure it's quote unquote appropriate, or we're not stepping over any lines or crossing any boundaries. Even if we aren't, it could potentially look like it. And so it's constant, nonstop thinking about where you are, what you're doing, what you're wearing, what your facial expression is. Are you wearing these big ass sunglasses that are inappropriate for the day? You know what I mean? It's like, are you fitting in, or are you standing out? Which is the very first thing I said, like, how can I fit in with this environment? As much as I stand out, how can I fit in?
Who's your support through all this, right? Who are you talking to, like, just for either guidance or bounce stuff off, or just, I mean, I don't know, like you can't coach yourself. I've done that before.
Yeah.
But like at the end of the day, like you're better when you're talking to other people. So who's your support system?
Cece Clark, and now her name is Cece Kraft. She got married, but she was with the Indians for a long time before I was in the field. And so she was like one of the first people I called, because I had a lot of male mentorship and it was awesome. But as far as like female, and we talked about what to wear. We talked about where she got her pants. We talked about how to know where to go into the clubhouse and where not to go into the clubhouse. And Lauren Johnson is another one. She works with the Yankees right now. And so we talk all the time because we have very similar stories. We're like, oh my God, what do you do with this? Listen to this. And just navigating it with them. So I'm very lucky to have those two female, but a lot of it is just like figuring it out on your own too, because like, I mean, even the first day with the Pirates, I was the only female with the Pirates. With the Phillies, there's quite a few of us. I think we have 9 or 10 now, which is amazing. We have 2 strength coaches. We have 2 nutritionists, dietitians. One of our other mental skills coaches besides me is a female. So like we're growing. We have front office females. It's really cool. But with the Pirates, I was the only one. So I had a guy's shirt on. I had the men's basketball shirts. Luckily, I'm almost 6 foot, so my feet are big. So they had shoes that fit me, but I wore the guy's shoes. And I was like, what am I wearing? And like, they tried so hard. And I used the handicap bathroom because there was no female locker room. It's like, you know, where all the guys would go and, you know, go number 2 in that bathroom. That was mine. That was now my bathroom because it was the only private bathroom in there, right? In the clubhouse. And so, but it's so funny. And like, I have stories for days, but the thing I can truly say is they all try so hard to make me feel comfortable because it's so the anomaly and it isn't normal yet. It's getting more normal and it's gaining traction and it's amazing. But like, they really are like, what do you need? When do you need it? How can we make you comfortable in super uncomfortable situations? And like, they work with you so much, like both with the Pirates and the Phillies. I can't say enough about how welcoming and working with us constantly to figure it out. So
see, I was just going to ask that question. You keep doing that, but that's exactly what I was going to ask. I was like, wait, are they working with you? Do you feel comfortable? Do you feel like they're making progress? Maybe you'll have a bathroom that is not the designated, you know what, bathroom for players. So it sounds like they're asking, and it sounds like you're not afraid to use your voice to ask for what you need in order to be successful in your job as a woman in sport, specifically on the baseball side of things.
Yes.
Whew, we have talked about a lot. Tell us about Mental Sweat Monday and your Instagram.
So Mental Sweat Monday is a 1-minute video about different strategies and skills and techniques that any performer can use and implement on a daily or weekly basis. So I started it because so many people are like, mental performance coach, what does that even mean? And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I started it to 1, educate the public on what a mental performance coach is. And then 2, right, I would go on social media and all you see is like break a sweat, right? Do yoga, go run, do CrossFit, like eat this, do that, right? Everybody was so concerned with getting that physical sweat and that physical appearance. And I was like, which is awesome. And I agree with, don't get me wrong, love working out. But where is the mental performance? Where are we checking on ourselves mentally? And so I was like, this is going to serve as a mental performance, mental skill reminder to make sure you're doing it on a weekly basis. And the name Mental Sweat is so it like triggers in your mind, like just like you're supposed to break a physical sweat every day. Hopefully too, you start breaking a mental sweat every day too. So it's a 1-minute video, short and sweet, because that's what I like. That's what attracted me to it the most. And it's almost been 2 years now. This in January of next year will be 2 years. So I can't believe it. And it's led to some really freaking cool opportunities. So I don't see it stopping anytime soon.
I love that. It's using your expertise. And yes, you have a full-time job, but you get to do this big thing on the side and brand yourself, right? It's kind of like, I mean, I was watching them and prepping, and it's kind of like, watch out, Tony Robbins. Like, seriously, Hannah is coming for you. She might be as tall as you too. Not realize you're you're that tall.
Yeah.
That's it. I think you have a lot of tall friends or something. So I was like,
I do.
Okay. It must be a thing. All right. So where can people find this? I know it's on Instagram. Do you post it other places as well?
So it's on Instagram, it's on Twitter, and it's on LinkedIn.
Good. And now I know all of my guests are busy, but if someone wanted to get in touch with you, what would be the best way to do that?
Usually messages are great, like either on Instagram or Twitter. But if those don't go through, or LinkedIn, you can always email me. My email is just hannahhuesman@gmail.com. So pretty simple, first, last name. So yeah.
All right. Perfect. I'll put all of that in the show notes, you guys, so you guys can go find it and follow along with Hannah, and definitely watch those on Monday. Hannah, this has been amazing. We could talk for hours on this, but I appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. I love the questions, and I love diving into the unknowns and the things that people don't talk about a lot. So I love this.
So what did you think of this episode? Do you know another woman who works or is aspiring to work in sports? Would you do me a favor and share this with them? It would mean so much if together we could support and inspire other women on their journey. And let's stay connected. I love meeting and talking to new people. Follow me on Instagram @Jahaan Blake, and join the free Game of Her Own community by visiting jahaanblake.com. I can't wait to meet you.